And a keen observer will note that it looks kind of like a session.
Yeah, it looks like a session. With 170mm of front wheel travel and 165mm of rear wheel travel, Devinci's brand new Spartan 29er is being released as part of a new wave of really long travel enduro bikes. Now that the 29er version has been released, we can confirm that the travel is the same across the 650B and 29er versions. However, there are some slight variances in geometry. The brand new carbon design has some interesting features, which include geometry flip chips, a bottle cage mount on the down tube, and Di2 integration. But one of the more interesting things is the Super Boost Plus 157 spacing. Now this is an aim to get the back end of the bike even wider than before to help increase stiffness. We're going to be concentrating on the low setting figures for this bike because let's face it, who's really going to be using the high setting? The geometry for the head angle on the 650B bike and the 29er is exactly the same at 65 degrees. However, for the 29er version, they've steepened the seat tube angle slightly to 76 degrees. The chainstays for a 29er are impressively short at 432mm. Across the sizes, the bike's reach changes by 20mm increments from 425mm to 485mm. The size large that we've tested is 465mm long. Along with the increase in reach, the stack height also increases by 9mm per size. This means that bigger riders get a higher front end. Devinci have implemented their own split pivot system, which is a Dave Weigel design on the new Spartan. This basically means that there's a pivot on the rear axle of the bike, not on the chain or seat stays. Devinci claims their split pivot suspension system separates accelerating and braking forces, gives you more small bump compliance, helps improve traction, and helps reduce pedaling induced bob. Our top of the line Spartan has been supplied with a RockShox Deluxe RC3 rear shock and RockShox Lyric RC2 Debonair fork. This X01 Eagle spec version is the top of the line Spartan. It retails for $9,000. Despite that, it was the heaviest bike we've got on test in this category, but, and this is a big but, it only weighs 30.5 pounds.
The Spartan had a really good climbing position. On paper it's got a 76-degree seat tube angle, but after the first day's riding I still slammed the seat as far forward as I could on the rails. So the suspension design on the Spartan was really firm under power and it seemed to have pretty good support from the suspension, not too much bobbing.
We did find that to make the bike perform better on the downhills, we had to increase the sag rate to 35% of shock stroke. And this did have quite a detrimental effect on the pedalling of the bike.
On the upside, the Super Deluxe shock has the compression adjustment lever, and flicking that into the medium or the firmest mode seemed to take away any of those so-called issues that we had.
The 65-degree head angle didn't go unnoticed on the trails, and it would have been nicer to see something ever so slightly slacker for a bike in this category.
It didn't really seem to sit into the travel so much, which did give it the feeling of a steeper head angle. Pivot and the Devinci have the same head tube angle at 65 degrees on paper, but of the rear suspension riding a little bit higher in the travel actually makes quite a big difference to the ride dynamic of the bike.
It's interesting that Devinci have chosen to spec a 51mm offset on this bike. The other bikes in this category on our test, they all run 44mm offsets on their forks. And I think that the Devinci would have really benefited from having that same lower offset. You know, and all of these little things together, not in isolation, they all add up to a bike that, you know, it kind of feels maybe a little bit skittish on the trails. You get quite a lot of feedback through the bars. You feel maybe a little unstable on certain bumps.
Overall, it was a really good pedaler for its intended use.
Devinci have decided to spec RockShox Lyric RC2 fork to the front of the new Spartan. Now this is a really good choice. The Lyric's an incredibly adjustable damper, it's really easy to dial in, and the Debonair air spring is really easy to set up.
Even though there's not as much adjustment as, say, the Fox Grip 2 damper on their latest fork, I don't know why, it just doesn't feel like you need it. You just put in some air pressure, get your rebound right, and you're away.
It's got the carbon wheels, the carbon bars, it's got the carbon cranks. It's really, a top of the line deal here. That said, and this is kind of unfortunate, I found that all of these different parts together, combined with the frame and other inherent ride qualities of the bike, it had a real harshness to it, and I found myself getting incredibly fatigued riding the bike. This isn't something that I normally experience, and it's not something I experienced on the other bikes that I rode. To me, that says that there's an inherent problem with the components they've decided to spec on the bike. The Devinci is also spec'd with Maxxis EXO casing tyres. The casing doesn't give enough support, and it doesn't provide enough protection against rips, tears, or punctures. Unfortunately, again, sorry Devinci, you guys have spec'd guide brakes to your Enduro race bike. Now for me, this bike needs to have the biggest, burliest brakes going, because you're going to be riding long stages, you're going to be descending for a long time, and you're going to be putting those brakes through complete torture.
Yeah, I can't think of any time I've been riding down a steep, gnarly descent and thought, I'm really happy my brakes are so light. In this situation, I'll take the code every time.
This is a bit of a private matter, but STG's Fly MTN seat is the only seat out of all the test bikes we've had that has given me a bit of a numb gooch.
Contact points, they're not going to suit everybody. It's a fairly cheap product to change out.
I reckon the person who should buy this bike is someone who's looking for an incredibly stiff, accurate race bike, someone who can deal with that stiffness, someone who's strong, someone who's maybe quite heavy. Not necessarily big, but heavy. You're going to have to plough this bike through the ground, and that's when you're going to get the most from it. However, if you're a bit of a weed, maybe if you're more into your compliant bikes, you're going to struggle, so maybe avoid it.
Yeah, if I was going to buy one, I'd probably choose a cheaper model, put on some bigger brakes, put on some bigger, chunkier tyres, heavier tyres. There were our thoughts on the Devinci Spartan 29er. Expect some more videos coming soon on Pinkbike.